3.
So my concern back here, if you come on the back side of this, is I want to lay this out to maximize the space, but I don't want the guest, the customer, to be looking in at ugly stuff. You know, when the way it was set up before, no matter which angle the customer is standing at, they can see the back side of everything, and that's a big faux pas for me in an open kitchen, in fast food, grab and go, light casual. It has to look appealing. And so it doesn't have to be like your kitchen in your home. It just has to not look messy and disorganized. And the things that people look at should, in my opinion, give them a sense that you're doing something really extraordinary. You're doing something really extraordinary that they can't do home. So right now we have the POS that used to be over here. I still think this is the right location for this, but I reserve the right to change that up. So I'm just really thinking about flow, best location of stuff. So if the smoothie bar is going to be the main attraction, I feel that when you walk into the space, you should, because of the way it's currently laid out right now, I feel like there should be a theater right over here. You're coming in, yes, it's on an angle, but I definitely feel that the theater of the space should be at this angle facing the door to make it look interesting. I don't like when everything is running parallel to the front door. I feel like you tend to let your eye drift to the back rather than to look over here. So I've got to, if I was starting from scratch and tearing this all down, I would probably make the POS system and everything facing, what's that word, perpendicular? Perpendicular? Okay. I would probably make everything perpendicular or parallel to the front of the store. But since I'm going to preserve all this just to save money, I want, and there's a round edge on the corner, just a nice soft round edge. I do actually just want to act as though when you come into the store, there's something important right here facing in this direction to grab your attention and make you feel like, wow, I'm somewhere special. So I might be overanalyzing that. I don't feel totally confident about it yet. I'm going to take it step by step. First, I'm going to put the produce washing sink in the most obvious place next to the floor drain, against the wall. I can easily put up a backsplash. And what I'm doing in this location to save time and money is I went to my kitchen fabricator and I bought a 4x8 sheet of cutting board material, 1/2 inch, which is obviously overkill. I could easily use sheetrock, but then I would have to put some stainless steel, and I didn't want to waste time for fabricated stainless steel pieces, and it would probably be considerably more money. So this is really easy to cut. You can cut it like plywood with a jigsaw and make it fit. There's some areas back here. Come on back. So there's some areas here where the sheetrock had rotted through. We're going to clean that up, and instead of replacing it again with sheetrock, we're just going to screw these boards of plastic in. So we'll end up getting is a waterproof barrier between this and the interior wall. And so this will also become the backsplash of the sink. We actually already cut a piece for it, where is that piece? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. We cut a piece for it already. We mitered the edge at a 45-degree angle so that when we put it against the wall, against this edge, it'll shiplap, which means that water will just run back into the sink as opposed to having a seam where grime and water and corrosion can live, and it'll be really difficult to clean. So here's the miter that my good friend Diego did for us over here. It's really nice. You can see that. This is what's actually going to fit as the backsplash to the sink. And you'll have a pretty clean angle over here. And of course, all the screws that we use will be stainless steel screws. And that's a very important thing when you're building your kitchen, is that any area that will touch water, you should definitely have a beveled screw that I can countersink into this. And so everything will just be really clean. It's not the type of sink that I would build in a home kitchen, but it's excellent for an industrial kitchen where you're trying to minimize the deep cleaning that has to take place on a daily basis and you want to make sure that it's kind of bomb-proof. You know, you don't want to have to jump into production, cut it off, and then have to do construction or maintenance. So I think about that while I'm building. This machine here is a machine that I highly recommend for anybody with a restaurant that has to wash a lot of different types of greens. It runs about $10,000, and you'll probably spend about $2,000 installing it because there's electrical considerations and there's all kinds of tricky plumbing that we like to do to make it work. But essentially, there is a air pump on the side. Here you can kind of see this. And it's kind of noisy, but I like that. It's an air pump. And what it does is it pushes air at a pretty high rate through the basin. And it comes out through these different channels, and it just creates like a cyclone effect, or I don't know, like a whirlpool effect. It's basically a very high-powered jacuzzi for your produce. And this washes everything. If you got delicate greens from cauliflower, broccoli, to you know, your larger things that when you bring into your juice bar, so to speak, for example, if you're getting pineapples in, I recommend very highly that you run them through the produce washer so that you don't attract fruit flies or get rid of the fruit flies that might come in on that stuff. So on this type of machine, depending on the size of your business, this machine is going to pay for itself pretty quickly. I can't do an exact calculation for you. It's based on your man hours of how much you have to spend to have people wash produce. But let's just look at it as a consideration. When you hire a produce washer, from my experience, they're the most likely people to quit because it's the most laborious job that I can think of in the restaurant. They're always standing in front of the sink. They're always dunking into the sink. They're constantly lifting heavy boxes in all different directions. They're busy, 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 busy. And they're very skilled. They actually have to know how to separate things and make sure that they're not contaminating, and you know where they put the wires. It's a thoughtful process. It's not easy if somebody on your wash produce line quit to just simply find somebody and say, go here and wash produce. They got to know what they're doing if you want clean produce. So this machine effectively takes out 85% of the training. If a person can turn on a switch and fill up the sink, what they've got to do next is dump produce in there and take it back out when it's clean. That's the extent of the training. The other thing is the speed at which you can move through washing. It's probably going to amplify, depending on what you're washing, it's going to amplify your produce washing by, I'm guessing, an average of 5 to 10 times. And the other thing that I like about it, this is the most important thing, is that you'll actually have clean produce. So that's probably the most important factor, where you don't really have to think about return on investment, is that when you have a machine that agitates this well and gets, you know, water flowing around your leafy green produce, you're very likely to get out all the dirt and possible insects. Of course, don't be misled to believe that you can wash all your insects off of your produce. I did a lot of experiments in the facility with produce. We had some years back, we had some problems with Japanese beetles. Very pretty little insect, iridescent little shell. They were winding up in salads, and we had enough complaints where we had to really figure out what was going on. So the kitchen, when they found them in the produce, specifically the kale, they would take that piece of kale, they would bag it up, and then I would come to the kitchen and I would look at it. And what we did was we actually did a really ridiculous experiment. We took a piece of kale, we took a wired Tyvek hang tag, we labeled it, we put it through the kale, wired it shut, emptied out the giant produce washing machine that we had, and we put the piece of kale into the produce washer, and we let it go through the whole cycle. And when we got that piece of kale out of the produce washer, the little beetle was still stuck on there. And if we looked at it with a 10 times diamond jeweler's loop, you can see that this beetle had these incredible feet that had these hooks in it, and there's no way in the world that you're gonna get rid of a beetle like that off your produce unless you're cooking it. So the solution to the problem wasn't washing produce 10 times. It was actually going directly to the farm and looking at their way that they would go out to the field and pull the crops out and how they would handle it. And we found out that when our produce from our supplier was too cheap, we were usually getting it from a farm that had terrible field habits. And so we had to go back to our original vendor, and we were paying more for kale, but the beetle problem went away. And so that's the game, baby.